A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to our sunset safari, where, as I said, we are starting off with one of the most spectacular bulls I have ever seen in my entire life. He is absolutely stunning, and I plan on spending as much time as we possibly can with him. But first, a quick introduction for those of you that are new to these live safaris and perhaps are wondering what you have just stumbled across. My name is Jamie, and this afternoon Archie is on camera with me, and we're live from the Masai Mara in Kenya. Later on, we will be joined by our colleagues in South Africa, so you get to experience two wilderness areas, all completely 100% live. Because it's live, it means that it's interactive, so questions that you'd like to ask or comments that you'd like to make, you can do on #SafariLive on Twitter. Now, Archie and myself have been out the entire day. We've seen some truly wonderful, wonderful things, including some very entertaining moments with lions chasing vulture. But I have to say, this chap's been a highlight. Now, what I'm going to do, we're actually going to reposition before... we're going to reposition, and we're going to get a better view of his face, because he is utterly gorgeous. The largest tusks I've ever seen, and a great age that suggests a huge amount of wisdom. Now, it's not just myself out here, otherwise that would get very boring. Brent is out as well. Let's go and find out how his full day in the park has been.
Well, Craig and I have also had a splendid day out in the wild. We're with the Salt Lake Pride, and it's not often we see all 6 females together, so that is quite nice. We're sitting above the Salt Lake down south in the Mara. We've had a fantastic day. And, oh, there we go. Roll over. The girls are quite hungry, but there's not too much food about these parts at the moment. And also there are 2 of the 4 male lions that roam around these parts. We've probably seen a good 200 to 300 elephants on our wanderings. How many lions have we seen? Probably 23, 24 lions in total. We saw the very, very skittish border pride as well, which are not used to cars. There's another male lion sleeping on that termite mound over there. And we also got quite a treat. We saw a very big male leopard. My name is Brent Leo Smith. I have Craig, aka the big scary Batman, on camera, and we're going to sit here with the Salt Lakes for a little bit longer, and I'm hoping a little bit later that big male leopard we saw will move out of the low-lying area he was in, and hopefully out into some signal, because at the moment, unfortunately, he is in an area that is not good for signal. It is inhabited by gremlins. But #SafariLive if you have any questions for us. It has been a stunning day. What else have we seen, Craig? Lots of Thompson's gazelle, eland, topi, zebra, crocodiles. Oh yes, we saw a couple of crossings this morning, and we saw the same lions that Jamie saw chasing vultures. But quickly across to Jamie and her massive elephant bull.
He truly is utterly spectacular. One of the first things, of course, that you'll notice is that he's wearing a collar, and I'm almost certain that this gentleman would have a name. He's collared, of course, because of those enormous tusks, so it is in order to ensure that he is kept safe and secure. He's monitored regularly in order to ensure that he doesn't become a victim of poaching. Obviously, those tusks, although he is in one of the safest areas he could possibly be in Africa, obviously those tusks could potentially be a draw card for poachers. But I'm sure he has a name. He is very well protected, never you fear. And you can just see the age within him. See how he's sunken around his temporal regions. His skin almost seems to be slightly too big for his body. Slow, gentle movements. And of course feeding around the water areas, because at this point he'll be down to his last set of teeth, and he'll need to, or he'll prefer to eat as much soft food as possible. So the grasses around these watery areas would be perfect for him. His final set of teeth will have worn down, and he's getting, not yet, but he is getting to the point where he's reaching the end of his natural life. He's easily over 40, I would say 45, possibly even 50. Mrs. Zero, you say, wow. I don't know that there's a better way of essentially responding to him or reacting to him. He just is... I don't know. I think I could sit and watch him all day. He gives off this impression of such wisdom and comfort in his own skin. Happy in his own company. He's been wandering round here for so long. I wonder what things he's seen, what changes, comings and goings of people. It would be really truly fascinating to know a little bit about his life history. We never will, of course, but we should be able to find out who he is. I think that would actually probably be relatively easy. I'm not going to say where in the Mara we are, just out of an extra little bit of safety's sake. So I'm not going to say where we are. The Mara is a very, very big place. It is blazing hot this afternoon. I can feel the sun beating down upon my back. I'm surprised to say that Brent's lions are up and about. Let's go and find out where they're off to.
Well, there we go. One of the big boys has moved. He's come to join the rest of the pride. Now, Jamie is correct. It is scorchingly warm today, but these lions don't seem to mind too much as they are lying out in the sun. They were in the shade a little bit earlier today, but they have made their way towards this termite mound, and there's just a pile of lions lying on it. As I said, they are quite hungry. I was hoping they might get up and move a little later, but I still think we're going to be playing patience for quite a while. Now, there are some elephants around as well that have just come out of the salt lick. There were a good 100, or no, probably not that many, 50 or so elephants in the salt lick today, splashing about, having a great time. Oh, lion's up, or lioness is up, should I be more specific. I wonder if she's going to head back towards the shade of the tree. No, she's going to flop down over there. Try and get a little bit of shade from the tiny bush. Now, what else have we got around here? Oh, just elephants. Elephants. So, Craig, if you look top end of the salt lick, right up there in the distance, and you can see what I mean. There's so many elephants. If we just pan off to the right, there's even more. And those are the elephants that were all in the salt lake today, swimming and splashing and having a grand old time. Now, I've been trying to keep an eye out, see if there's any potential prey around, and the only thing I've seen, there's one impala and 3 topi and a crowned crane. There's the one impala. Off to the left of the impala are the 3 topi. 3 topi. And to the left of them, a little bit more. Oh, I've lost sight of it now. Oh, what's that? Can you zoom in there, Craig? Did I spot? No, it is just a log. I thought there might be something else. Now, there's often buffalo around here, and this pride will definitely go for buffalo, and they're a very big pride. So, with the 2 males here as well, it could be some good hunting for them. Now, apparently, I heard a rumor that one of these lionesses has some cubs. Sorry, I thought I saw a warthog walking towards us. It wasn't. Apparently, one of these lionesses has some cubs. But I'm a bit worried the area where it is might not, or might have gremlins in there. So I will try go down there a little bit later, but we'll just sit here for now to see if they do get up and move. Kathy is wondering, how far away are the lions from the closest prey? Well, it's those 3 topi and an impala, so quite far, probably 6, 7, maybe 800 meters or so. So quite far away. However, behind us, down towards the Tanzanian border, there is quite a lot of game down that way. But nothing particularly close to them at the moment. The male leopards that way, probably about 1.5 kilometers or 2 kilometers from us here. But he's just in the bottom of a lug. He's actually up in a tree, but at the base of a valley. Well, as I said, we're going to play the patience game here. While we do that, let's go back to Jamie and a wonderful big old Ellie.
The wonderful big old Ellie is just wandering. Nothing to do, nowhere to really be, just a day spent eating. The perfect peaceful retirement. Reaching down, right down, to pull up the reeds that are growing in this particular spot. Proud cat mama, it's a question that is often asked, particularly with regards to collared cats, but of course it just as equally applies to our collared gentlemen. Now, proud cat mama's question is, does the collar bother him in any way? Do you know, I mean, it's difficult for us to ever know exactly what they think. I think if it really was irritating him, he'd probably fiddle at it with his trunk. I mean, the collars are designed to be as essentially non-invasive as they possibly can be, while still keeping enough room for the tracking system and, of course, for the battery bank, because you don't want to be darting an elephant and recollaring them regularly. It is something that does carry risks. So in this case, the scientists who put the collar on him, or the group that put the collar on him, would have weighed up the advantages and the disadvantages. In my mind, what I've always thought is that it's kind of like, well, I suppose for the ladies out there, or the gentlemen, it's kind of like wearing a new piece of jewelry, a new ring or something like that, and you're aware of it for the first few days, and you fiddle with it, and you spin it round your finger, and then you kind of forget about it, and in fact when it's gone, you feel a little bit odd. I imagine that it's a similar thing for him, but I mean, it's impossible for me to tell you exactly what he's thinking or feeling, but I think if it really did irritate him, he could maybe not get rid of it, but he'd certainly fiddle with it more often. And I've encountered a great number and been involved in a great number of collaring projects and collaring various elephants, and I've never found that they're in any way treated differently or ostracized. It doesn't have an impact on the way that the other animals treat them. They don't care what he looks like. And the smell would have long since vanished. It probably smelt a little bit odd in the beginning, smelt like people and medicine and the materials that they used to make the collar. But I don't think it would bother him unduly. And you can see it's loose around his neck, it's not tight. I'm not sure if I've got this name right. Sorry, Faith. I think it's Spass? No? Yes? Spath. Spath. Now, Spath, you want to know if he would still be breeding, or still be capable of breeding, or if he has perhaps left it for the young uns. No, he hasn't quite given that pursuit up yet. So he would still be capable of reproducing. In fact, elephants really truly reach the prime of their reproductive life after 40. And that's when they're big enough to compete. Of course, they're still capable of breeding when they're younger than that. But after 40, they go through this massive growth, or at least their tusks go through this massive growth spurt. They are more than capable of competing with other males. So I think while he might struggle now these days to keep up with, a young gun that's 40 years old or something along those lines, I think he would still be more than capable should the situation come up. Right, let's get a little bit closer to him and get another view. I don't really want to leave him. I'm in no rush. It's still really, really warm. I don't know where my lions from this morning went. They've gone to hide in the shade somewhere. I think this is an opportunity that it would be very sad to miss or to not take full advantage of. He's such a beautiful, peaceful old boy. Brent, I'm not particularly good at estimating how much a tusk like that would weigh, because I've actually never really had the opportunity to compare different sizes in weight. I've never been in a situation where I've held an elephant tusk. So to compare it in weight, the only thing I really have in terms of reference is the models that are in the museum at Letaba rest camp in the Kruger. And those tusks, those massive tuskers, sometimes weighed over 60, 70 kilograms. In this case, I don't think he's nearly at that point, but I would say that each one would easily weigh about 20 kilograms, probably round about 30. Let me think about it. No, 25? The left, maybe a little bit more on the right. You can see, obviously, he's broken off the tip of his left tusk, possibly in a fight with another male over a female. But that is a guess. I'm guessing in kilograms. That is my guess. I know that the small pieces that I've held of broken elephant tusks, they're a lot heavier than you expect them to be. Even an elephant's molar is a great deal heavier than you expect. It's a very solid substance. Well, it's like your teeth. It is your teeth, essentially, made of exactly the same stuff. So if I had to guess, that's how much I would guess, but I could easily be out. But that, if I compare them to the size of the tusks in the Kruger, that's what I would guess. Isn't he stunning? Still got a little bit of limber movement to him. One leg back, balancing himself. Oh, up on his wrists. And up again. He's still got it. Hey, old boy. Shouldn't really call you old boy, I should call you sir. He's certainly a great deal older than I am. I wonder how often he wanders around here. This is the very first time I've ever seen him. A very interesting question, one that I've often contemplated when trying to find elephants, particularly when I was involved with researching specific herds. So Debbie's watching in Vancouver and says, do elephants follow a specific feeding pattern within, or feeding route within their home ranges, or do they move at random? Do they just move where they want to? I think there's a little bit of both. I think that there is the memory and instinct as to where the best food will be at certain times of the year. I mean, an elephant will wander enormous distance. They don't have territories, as you know. So I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. Once they're within an area, they'll wander where they want to. And their movements will be changed. In his case, I mean, there's a few breeding herds around. He might go and visit the breeding herds, check and see if any of the females are in estrus. Or he might just wander along. Now, his feeding patterns will also be dictated by the quality of the food that he's eating, or at least the softness, the chewability, if you will, of the food that he's eating. So that's why he will stick around water areas, which of course is where the story of elephant graveyards have come from, because, or at least one of the theories behind an elephant graveyard, elephants don't go to one place to die. They just don't. It's not how it works. But they do feed in their old age around rivers because that's where the vegetation is softer. Then, when there is a big flooding event, whenever it happens to be, oh, the zebra in the background, having such a quarrel. You can hear them squeaking. Then, of course, when there's a flood, then the bones will collect in one place. And hence where you get the idea of an elephant graveyard. Now, Shelby, what is he eating within this ditch? It looks like a lot of effort. It does, doesn't it? But he's eating the really soft. It looks like, to be honest, it looks almost like he's eating sedges. But I've been struggling to see. A lot of the time he's pulling up just very fresh, very green grass that's growing at the base there, while I've been sitting watching him. And the occasional small plant, small young plant, hasn't had a chance to get tough and woody yet. absolutely no hurry. Those are eland, by the way, in the background, just so that you know, for our new viewers. Learning to identify the different African antelopes, that is the largest of them, although dwarfed in comparison to this gentleman. Can really see how prominent his bones are. Okay, as our Ellie strolls off, he's moving away from where I can follow him, so I'm just going to loop around and rejoin him. So while we do that, let's send you over to Brent, who is still playing the patience game with some sleepy kitty cats.
Very sleepy kitty bats, but very cute kitty cats. Oh, look, so comfortable. So it is quite funny that they're sitting out in the sun when there's a wonderful big fig tree just behind them, and that's where we spotted them. Where did we spot them, Craig? Probably about 11 o'clock this morning for the first time, and then we went on a wander to see what else we could find, had some lunch next to the second salt lick, saw the leopard, went looking for the female cheetah and cubs, which is the main reason we came here. But unfortunately, she's moved quite close to the Tanzanian border, in an area that is full of gremlins, so we decided to come back to our lions. And, which female now? She's rolled. So, as I said, there's apparently cubs that are around a month old, not too far from here, and it was that female. There we go, that female with her back to us now, and she rolled over a little bit earlier, and we could see the suckle marks on her. So that's Mom. So this will be the first litter of cubs that we know about born to these males. Now, these males are about 5-6 years old, so they've probably only recently taken control of this pride. And there's only 2 of them here. I've seen 4 together. And I say it's quite nice to see all 6 ladies together. I've only seen 6 ladies together once before. So quite often you'll find 2 or 3 or 1 all around this area. But it is very nice to see all 6 of them together and schnoozing. Now, Jen's wondering, do lion prides ever join up with other prides to create a super pride? Well, no. They will only join with related prides. Normally when super prides are formed, it is when a lion pride grows very quickly. So imagine all 6 of these females had 4 cubs each. So that would be 16. No, sorry, more. What does that be? 24. Yes, 24 cubs, and let's say 20 were females, then all of a sudden you've got 26 lions. And that's sort of how the super prides get formed in a very successful period for the lions. Now, however, super prides very, very seldom stay together for very long, because 26 adult lions take a lot of food, and quite often it's very difficult for the lions to be able to catch enough to keep all of them well fed. So what happens is they'll split off into smaller prides, and normally and the super pride, after being together a while, will split quite quickly. Now, I was lucky enough to see a super pride in South Africa at a place I worked called Lebombo, and there were at one stage with all the cubs close on 40 lions in that pride, but they didn't stay together very long. They were only together that number for a couple of months before they split, because they found it very difficult to keep feeding that many lions. Ryan's wondering, do they lie on their backs strictly for comfort, or are there other reasons? There's no biological reason for them to do it. It just feels good. And you'll tend to see them do it quite often when they've got very fat bellies as well. Now, I'm completely lying. There is a reason they do lie on their backs like that, Ryan. Apart from comfort, it helps them release heat. So especially when they've got full bellies, which these ones don't at the moment. But you can see their belly is lighter, and a lot of heat will exude off there. So putting your belly out in the wind will help cool you down. Catherine says, they look so comfy, they're making me sleepy. Imagine how we feel, Catherine. We've been sitting with them for some time, since probably around 2 o'clock our time. I don't even know what the time is at the moment. Oh, it's nearly 4. So we've been sitting with them for about 2 hours. As I said, we spotted them at about 11. I didn't think they were going to do too much. So that's why we came back later in the afternoon. I think we might take a little trundle around, see what else is about. We'll come back to the lions a little bit later. Bye, kitties. Well, it sounds like Jamie's having a fantastic time with that big old gentleman of the African bush. Let's go back to her.
We are indeed. He's kept us guessing, I suppose, as is his absolute right. He keeps sort of changing directions and, well, not quite picking one direction to go in, but that's okay. I mean, we've just spoken about the fact that he's essentially ambling with no real destination in mind, just wherever the food happens to attract his interest. Now, I'd love for him to come up a little bit closer to us, and you'll probably find that if I was to push things, I could, not push things, but if I were to try and get a bit closer to him, I probably could. But around a lugger like this, I think, he's got enough of a struggle without trying to get around me to try and secure his footing as well. So I'm just sitting back, enjoying his presence and enjoying the peace of mind that comes with a sighting like this. There's nothing that can put you in a better mood than an elephant. Walt, I have seen 1 or 2 elephants that are blind in one eye or both eyes, or at least partially blind. So yes, they do get cataracts. A lot of the time I think it's more caused by traumatic injury than anything else, but I have seen them with cataracts. There are certain diseases that elephants do get. They are prone, for example, not prone, but they are susceptible to things like anthrax outbreaks. They do also, though, have a tremendous immunity to certain other things. And there's some very interesting articles recently on the elephants' not fully immunity is the wrong word, but their resistance to cancerous cells, for example. But there are certain diseases that they do get. And something we've spoken about recently was the fact that they also get, especially obviously elephants in captivity. It doesn't really happen with wild elephants, but elephants in captivity get arthritis from being cooped up and standing on uncomfortable flooring, concrete flooring. Sorry, I'm just going to add an extra layer of sunblock to my poor weather-beaten skin. I feel as though I'm slowly crisping. I'm going to look like that elephant by tonight. Very interesting question from Tony. Now, typically, Asian elephants were more regularly used as, or domesticated and trained as some kind of beast of burden. But Tony's question is specifically whether or not there was any kind of civilization that utilized the African elephant for the same, for the same purposes, essentially. And not that I think actually yes, towards North Africa. Now that I think about it, I was about to say no, I don't think so. But I'm trying to think. I think that quite possibly it was something that was used. Perhaps around the Egyptian time? I'm not sure. I really am not sure. It's a very, very good question. And typically there's been far less use of African elephants for that sort of work. But it's a very good question. I'll try and find out for you. It would be very, very interesting to know. I'd be interested to know, of course, if any of you know the answer to that. If there were any African elephants used as war elephants. I confess I'm not 100% sure. But it would be really useful to find out. It would be a very interesting piece of history. Generally speaking, I would say it's less likely, or definitely less frequent, than the use of Asian elephants. Okay, so apparently Faith has passed the question on to Brent as well. He said he's not sure about war elephants, but he does know that elephants have been used for logging within the Congo Basin. That doesn't surprise me. Although it is less frequent in terms of historical events, less frequent use of elephants as, well, essentially labor. I'm sure, I've no doubt that it did happen. For some reason, all I can think of is Lord of the Rings now. Okay, let's go catch up with him and getting away from us again. Where's those cooling afternoon thunderstorms? We miss them. We miss them. Could use one right about now. Cats, hold on. I'll tell you how tall he is in a second. Let me just get up to him so that I can give you we can look at him and we can sort of get a comparison of size. It would be really nice if this were a slightly less frequently utilized road to do one of our size comparisons. So essentially what happens when we do that is, for our new viewers, I ask Archie to frame up on the elephant next to an object for comparison, and then I will go and stand in the same position once he's moved off. And our very technologically advanced viewers, or at least certainly more so than myself, are able to superimpose the two images to A, make me look much braver than I am, and B, give you a really, really good idea of the size of the animal that we're talking about. So, in this case, this elephant is 4.5 meters at the shoulder, I would say, if I had to guess. He's not that big, actually, to be honest. In terms of sheer physical size, I've seen larger elephants. He almost seems shrunken in on himself. But he's old and venerable, and he does have really, truly massive tusks, but he's not a big elephant. And you'll find that with you'll find that with all elephants. There's a genetic difference between individuals. So some are tall and some are short, and some are very large and some are very small, and some are small with very large tusks, and some are large with very small tusks. So I wouldn't say he's big, it's just his tusks are so very impressive. Spath, the white bit by his eye, and by the way, I'm even changing my opinion. I think he's even less than 4.5. I think he's about 4 meters at the shoulder. Now, Spath, you want to know about that white bit by the eye. So it is essentially the elephant's eye's response to a build-up of dust, and it helps to clean the eye. So it's a waxy substance that has collected in the corner of his eye. And you can imagine, walking around here, there's lots of dust flowing about, there's insects, there's all sorts of things. And if I remember correctly, something about an elephant's eye and their membranes. Let me just try and remember. They can't see particularly well. But that's essentially what that white bit is. And what you'll find, just to sort of back that up, is on really windy, dusty days when there hasn't been a lot of rain, the elephants are more likely to have that waxy build-up, and there might actually be more of it. And personally, I think elephants have one of the most beautiful, soulful eyes in the entire world. You'll notice as well, he's got quite long eyelashes. Again, also, for, first of all, protecting the eyes from thorns, but also from dust as well. There's a beautiful texture for you. I mean, I know very little about art, but I do know that that is a nature work of art right there. All of those different textures, patterns, mud caked on his skin. That's what it is. I've just remembered now that I'm sitting looking at his eye. Tear ducts. They don't have tear ducts. They don't have they only have tiny vestigial tear ducts. So they don't have fully functioning tear ducts. That's what it was. So they don't any kind of moisture around their eye just runs down their faces. That's why you often see elephants with drips around, or sort of wet marks around their eyes. Now, Monique, there's an very interesting question about the collar and whether or not that loose bit is of any way a risk in terms of it getting caught on something. So, Monique, it's a good question. Chances are he would be able, there's pretty much anything that he would catch that on, he would be able to pull free. Even a large branch or something like that would be very, very unlikely because it would kind of have to get past his head first. Oh, he's going into the water. Listen. Oh, I don't know if you can hear. The wind is blowing. The sound of his massive bulk moving through the water. Such a peaceful, peaceful sighting. Now within that collar will be a couple of different potential means. So a lot of collars give out radio frequencies that can then be used with telemetry in order to track the elephant. Most of them these days, however, are fitted with just an upload of GPS coordinates, and those will upload. The people who fit the collar can choose whether they want them to upload twice a day, once a day, 3 times a day, whatever it is, whatever the purpose of the research. But remembering, of course, that the more frequently it uploads, the quicker the batteries run dead. So an elephant collar can last anywhere from a year to about 3 years, depending on how frequently it's used. It's an interesting question, Jim. I too have heard that Asian elephants are easier to train than the African elephants are. And now I don't know exactly whether or not that's true, or whether that conclusion has been skewed by the circumstances that have created that perception. So obviously there are situations where it all goes wrong, and for the most part the training methods utilized are utterly barbaric. Perhaps it was that in this particular situation, within this continent, it was less necessary to train up elephants in the way that they have been trained up in Asia. Hence, it hasn't been done for all that long a period of time, or in very, very few places, and the Asian elephant population it's become something that was regularly done. And for all of those of you that want to go and ride on an elephant, please, please bear in mind that almost invariably The chances are that elephant has been trained in some way that is absolutely... If you knew how that elephant had been trained in order to put people on its back, they're not creatures they're not designed to carry people on their back. They're designed to wander around and do their own thing and eat soft food, in the case of this male elephant. Imagine the level of disrespect. I probably should... No, actually, I will say that quite happily. It's a devastating thought. Such an intelligent animal, you have to break its spirit in order for it to allow people on its back. Here's an animal that doesn't even like birds fluttering about it. Rishi, I think it's his age. I don't think his legs are actually all that weak, but remember how we sort of spoke about the fact that his skin looks too big for his body? You'll probably find he's losing condition, to be honest. I mean, if his teeth have really worn down, and we won't be able to get him to open up so that we can see into his mouth, but his teeth are probably very, very worn down, so he's not meeting his nutritional requirements, so he's slowly losing condition. And as is always the case with age, his skin's lost a bit of elasticity, subcutaneous fat has become thinner, and as a result that all sort of combines to make him look quite fragile in an odd way. And I agree with you, he does look a little fragile, but it's simply age. Are we going back the other way now, boy? Shall we turn around and follow you the other way again? He doesn't seem to be at all bothered by us. We haven't had so much as a backward glance from him. Are we coming up onto this side? Which way are we going to go? Let's just wait for him to pop up and see which direction he goes in before I start the vehicle again. Shelley, I've had my fair share of scary encounters with elephants. They can be very scary animals. They're, as I said, highly intelligent, which in its own way makes them both highly dangerous and at the same time relatively predictable. I'd be more afraid of walking up to an ostrich whose eye is bigger than its brain than I would walking up to an elephant. I've had quite a few scary encounters, and I've driven away from a few scary charges in my time, and sometimes the elephant just has a headache. A crack in a tusk and an abscess is going to cause a tremendous pain and make it exceptionally grumpy, and I have had a few circumstances where it has been a situation where I've needed to remove myself as quickly as possible. I've had a few. There is a standard approach to when an elephant is charging you. Obviously, when you're on foot, you avoid that situation at all costs, and sometimes it's impossible. You walk. I'll give you an example. I once walked out of a river. No, I didn't. They came out of the river. I came out of a block. And by the time I realized that the elephants were there, they could be so quiet. We were in the middle, and the youngsters were off to the right of us, and the matriarch was standing straight in front of us. And we couldn't really go anywhere. She'd seen us. She was upset, and she felt threatened. So we got everybody up onto a rocky... I was with guests. We got everybody up onto a rocky outcrop, and she came charging down the road towards us, a warning charge, not a serious charge. Now, the typical approach is to stand and shout and make yourself look big and scary, because at that point you're in a sort of battle of wills, in theory, with the elephant. In this particular case, to this day, I don't know why I did it, but I dropped down into a crouch. And for some reason that immediately placated her. So she read something within my body language. I'm not suggesting this works. Please, please, don't for 1 second, if your guide's going into training, don't disregard what your trainers have said. I'm just saying in this one particular instance, for some reason, that approach worked. Because immediately I became less of a threat to her. I was no longer something scary. Another example was on bushwalk once. We followed an elephant bull. We weren't so certain if he'd heard us or seen us, and we actually left him and carried on, and he followed us. And we went racing off after alarm calls, and then turned back to go the way that we'd come, and walked into him when he was about 10 meters away from us, because he was being deliberately silent. He was trying to sneak up on us to see what we were all about, because he was clever. They're clever. So I've had a few interesting encounters with elephants. Most of the time, though, they are inoffensive creatures. As long as you don't push them, they have absolutely no reason to be bothered. You just have to remember that you can't always predict what sort of a mood they're going to be in. Okay, let's turn around, because this is an awkward angle for Arch, and he's going to start moving in that direction anyway. And as we do, we can answer Proud Cat Mama's question about the collar. You do get self drop-off collars. You do get collars that release after a certain period of time, just like you get self-dissolving stitches, that sort of a thing. In this case, though, not with elephant collars. So in this case, it will have to be physically removed. And what you'll probably find... I broke the car. Oh well. What you'll probably find is that this will be... I don't know. I don't know what their policy is in terms of putting collars on elephants. I'm not sure what they'll do with him in the future. Obviously, the older an animal gets, the more... Just like with people. There's risks associated with general anesthetic. The same applies to older animals. Hey, my boy. You are so gorgeous. Can I stop here with you? Do you mind if we just share your space for a little while? You haven't seemed to mind so far. Oh, I feel like I've lost about 2 inches in height from sitting in the car all day. Mr. P, I don't know. How many grandkids does he have? Would he have great-grandkids? I'm just trying to work that out in terms of elephant aging. Let's say he had a daughter when he was 30. No, he would have grandkids, but he wouldn't be at the point where he'd have grandkids. Wait, great-grandkids is what I was trying to say. I don't think he'd have any great-grandchildren. As to how many he has... Well, that's a question only he knows the answer to, and he's not telling. I have absolutely no idea what his romantic history might have been. Perhaps he was a highly favoured elephant bull. He probably would have been. To look at the size of him, or at least the size of his tusks, he would be a very good match. But as to how many females he impregnated, how many children he had, how many grandchildren... we'll never know. And he probably doesn't know either, to be honest. Excuse me, sir. How many grandkids do you have? Sorry, Mr. P, I tried. If he's indicated the answer to me, it's in a language I'm not understanding. Oh, I understood that though. That was a gentle release of a build-up of gas. I think that's perhaps what he thought of my question. It must be so nice in temperatures like this to just walk through the water. Gus, yes, absolutely. Elephants love swimming. They can swim. They are more than capable of swimming. And not only that, they actually really genuinely, it sounds like one of those urban legends, doesn't it? But they actually really genuinely use their trunks as snorkels. So they can actually fully submerge and breathe through their trunks. How cool is that? One of those, you'll see elephants swimming when not necessarily today, but when our South African colleagues join us, they of course see that sort of sighting far more regularly than we do, because the temperatures are just that much hotter. And there's a few really nice, suitable dams where the elephants love to go and play and swim. I love it. It is one of my favorite things to watch because it's really very clear to me that the elephant's enjoying itself when it's swimming like that. I really, really enjoy watching it. You can see them, they tumble. Often you'll get young males fighting with each other in the water and pushing each other under. So yes, they can swim. And they can and they do. One of the funniest things I've ever seen was elephants chasing hippo. It's one of the bizarre things of this world. An interesting sighting. I think it might be time to say goodbye to our gentleman. I'll think about it. While I contemplate that, it seems like Brent has managed to find some signal. Let's jump across to him.
Well, we've just been checking the little luggers around here to see if we could find those tiny, less than a month-old lion cubs. But we have found some other babies. Oh, not quite the same color, but here we go. Aren't they cute? I love the way their little bounce run. It is, of course, Coke's hartebeest. Lovely, lovely little herd of Coke's hartebeest. Some Topi in the background. But there we go. Look, little horns coming out on the hartebeest. They are incredibly pretty antelope. Very elegant. Long legs. Oh, here goes a little one. Bouncy, bouncy, bounce. Where's he snorting at us? This area, you don't see, the cars don't come down here too often. So it's quite nice. Okay, we're just going to keep moving on up here a little bit. So there's two lugger systems. So I'm not sure which the guy who told me about the lion cubs was referring to the one that we're driving on next, or there's another one that splits off it. So we're going to go have a look at the second one. There's also a massive grouping of giraffe coming up. At least 20 that I can see from here, but they're still quite far away. Now remember, this is coming to you live. We literally have no idea what could happen, and that's one of the exciting things about being on a live African safari. Trudeau is wondering, are there any volcanoes in the region of the Masai Mara that might be disruptive to the wildlife? Not in the Masai Mara, no. This whole area was highly volcanic, and there's some big extinct volcanoes up towards Lake Naivasha, which is itself an old volcano. And there's actually a geothermal electricity plant in that area as well. But the closest active volcano to us here is in Tanzania, near Lake Natron. It's called Older Lengai, which means the hill or the mountain of God. And it's where the Maasai people believe God resides. It's quite far from here, but it's quite a small volcano, but it is active. And then, of course, the next big active volcano is quite a long way to the west of us. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, quite close to the border with Rwanda, but well too far away to affect the wildlife in this region. I'm just going to give you a long distance view of those giraffe. It's quite pretty from a distance. Also, I just want to have a quick scan on Termite Mountains. The Border Boys, this is also an area that they come into from time to time, the two male cheetah. There we go. You can see the giraffe there. Gorgeous. So peaceful out here. We can hear a rufous-naped lark and a yellow-throated longclaw, some insects buzzing. It's just very, very peaceful. It's been an absolutely beautiful day to be out for a full day. day, Elizabeth. Elizabeth's wondering, which part of the Masai Mara are we in? We're down in the southern sections of the Mara Triangle, probably about 600-700 meters away from the border with Tanzania and the Serengeti National Park. This is a stunning, stunning part of the world. Well, Catherine says gorgeous views. Indeed they are, Catherine. Now, it is absolutely stunning. I'm just going very, very slowly here, keeping my eyes peeled, hoping to spot a spotted cat. Now, if we find cheetah, we've seen all 3 of the big cats in the Mara today. And I'm hoping that leopard comes out of the lugger a little later and heads up onto the high ground so we can go have a look at him. Oh, having a bit of, can you go again with that? Sorry, Faith, we're having a bit of break up on the radio comms. I think if I keep still, it'll be a bit better. But it was from Terry, who's a new viewer. Welcome, Terry. Great to have you on the board. Terry's wondering, is it safe to go on safari in a convertible? It's very safe, Terry. The animals don't see the vehicle as a threat. It doesn't smell like something you can eat. It smells of diesel and whatnot. And, oh, some mud. And animals don't have an instinctive response to the vehicles. So a vehicle's only been around for just over 110 years. So as long as you drive carefully and considerately, the animals tend to ignore you. There are certain animals that are a bit nervous of vehicles, and you tend to just keep a little bit more distance from them, a little bit more respectful. And if you do that in time, they become nice and relaxed around vehicles, like the lions we were with a little bit earlier. Oh, and I don't think that those lion cubs are in this drainage system. I think it's in the drainage system that we've been driving along. But without Mom there, it's going to be quite tough to find them. So I think we're going to go back towards Mom. And as the giraffe are moving towards the west, we're going to do the same. While we do that, Jamie, I think, has decided to spoil herself and you and stay with that beautiful Ellie a bit longer.
We have just a few more minutes. Just a few more minutes with him. I can't really bring myself to drive away yet, but I think that moment is nearly upon us. It's taken me forever I've been sitting here listening, hearing these squeaking sounds, and I've only just realized that it's actually the sound of his trunk pulling up the grass. And it's the grass squeaking because it's wet. But it took me far too long to work that one out. Obviously, fried my brain in the sun today. Yes, the tusks do last quite a while naturally. After the natural death of an elephant, they will last just in the same way that bones last. They might get chewed on every now and again, particularly the base, by something like a hyena, because they'd make a very suitable chew toy. And hyenas like to chew things sometimes even when they're not going to get any kind of nutrition or any kind of nutrients out of it. But essentially, yes, they can last a very, very long time. And occasionally we find bits of tusk out in the wild when we're out on a bushwalk or something like that. It's even possible to find petrified tusks. Oh, you suppose you wouldn't use the word petrified for a tusk, but fossilized tusks, essentially. So it is possible to find them. And they can, under the right conditions, last a very, very, very long time. Anything that is found has to immediately be reported to the reserve management, obviously. And anything, I think it's a kilogram. Anything over a kilogram immediately gets handed over to them. Anything smaller than that, if it's a broken piece of tusk, as far as I know, obviously it'll differ from place to place. So don't go wandering off with any elephant tusks you find lying around. But anything smaller than that, I think, can be kept as a keepsake, but anything larger than a kilogram gets taken and handed in and locked away. Okay, boy. I'm going to say goodbye to you now. I hope we meet again. Let us go. Let us go and see what we can find. There's so much life in this particular area that we're in. Oh, goodness, I overcompensated there. Oh, sorry, Faith. I think my right eardrum's still intact. We have to turn up the radios and turn them down whenever we start the car. There's more Ellies over there. Obtuse Willie? Yes, actually. Elephants kind of are afraid of mice. And it's not so much specific to a mouse. It's more to do with little things moving around their feet, particularly because they've got a blind spot underneath their trunks, so they can't really see. Their eyesight isn't great, so all of a sudden they hear something moving or scurrying about, and they catch the movement out of the corner of their eye. And elephants are actually... Oh, warthog, calm yourself. Calm yourself. Speaking of panicky creatures, don't worry. Don't you worry. Nice example of a massive male warthog, talking about tusks earlier. So yes, elephants are actually kind of afraid of mice, or at least if I've seen them panic when they detect movement of something small, whether it's a snake or a mouse or whatever it happens to be, a scrub hare, whatever it happens to be, they do get a fright and they do go running often. Particularly young elephants will sometimes let off that blood-curdling scream that they are capable of producing, causing severe anxiety within the adults, who immediately think that they're being attacked and rush to their defense. So in a way, yes, it is true. Elephants are scared of mice. It's not really mice specifically, but it is something that is very clear. And you'll notice that elephants often chase animals. They'll chase, especially youngsters, will chase antelope, they'll chase birds in the case of the little ones. Actually, speaking of little ones, there's a really little one over there. I think I'm going to go to that elephant herd. I think I have changed my mind. Oh, goodness. Can we have a look at those Ellies at the back of their arch, just for a second? The Tommies are also busy making more Tommies. Or at least the male's trying to. If we go a little bit to the right there, Arch, it's always something that's quite entertaining. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Where'd he go? Keep going. I'm confused now as to where it is. Oh, I think no, he hasn't stopped yet. We're in the direction of that car that's coming along the road now. I think I might have led you a bit too far. Sorry. Where's the vehicle? There we go, there we go. To the right, to the right, to the right. There we go. That's what I was looking for. The male Tommy chasing the lady around. That's what I was after. I've only watched this once before. I was with Manu a few days ago. It's obviously the females are coming back into season. And the whole process is... Look, it's relatively entertaining. It's all part and parcel of nature out here. But it's the sheer indifference of the females that I find quite hilarious. She's really not interested in his attentions. She's just carrying on, getting on with her life. And I'm not entirely sure if these are successful mating attempts or just attempts. And then he's just not quite managing to complete the job or complete the task at hand, so to speak. I'm not sure. I can't imagine that these are successful attempts. Mary, could it be that she's not interested in him genetically? That you're sort of on the right track. It is very typical for females to refuse males, first of all because occasionally they get the wrong idea slightly too soon, so she might not be in full estrus. Oh, distraction. Dinner time, he needs to keep up his strength. There's lots of ladies about. So he might have got it slightly early, in which case the female will reject the male, but there are so many different examples out here where the female animal will reject the male a few times, or reject the advances of the male, sometimes up to 2 weeks, like with rhino. And they do that because it's nature's way of ensuring that she is actually getting the best possible genetic match, and that there isn't a better, stronger, better male that might come along and usurp that male's position, and therefore be of better genetic quality for her offspring. So yes, in a way you're not wrong. I don't think that she sees it that way, though. It's nature's way of ensuring that, but she's not really aware of that. So courtship can last a fair amount of time. And I mean, you'll see it during the rutting season. I always feel a bit sorry for the female impala because they just can't get a break. They're being chased around by the males for 2 months a year, then they spend the rest of that year pregnant, then they spend the rest of that year, or at least another 3 months, looking after their offspring, and then it's time to be chased around by the males again. And to add insult to injury, the males get confused when it's birthing season, and they decide that this is now the signal to mate again. So when the ewes are pregnant, they find themselves being chased round and round and round by the males again, because of all of the hormones floating in the air. So I admit to having a certain degree of sympathy for the poor female impala. They've got it pretty rough. Look at this tiny baby elephant at the back there. It's about to come, just there we go. Oh, should we go get closer? I think we should. Looks like it's going to be entertaining. It's just got that look about it. Mischief. Youthful mischief. And the influence of an older sibling potentially, to create even more mischief. They're sort of coming this way. I'm going to try and get a little bit closer. Let's try and get a bit closer and spend some time with Ellie's. Oh, okay. While we try and get a little bit closer to the entertaining elephants, let's go across to Brent and find out what his plans are from here.
Well, we're still checking on the lugger, so I didn't think it was that lugger. So there's the first sort of set of big fever trees, acacias. So I see vehicle tracks here as well. This could be where the little lion cub den is. And if we don't have any luck, no problem. We'll head back to the adults, and then hopefully we'll go check on that leopard a little later, see if it's moved out of the bad signal area it is. The leopard is the same leopard I've seen before around Mlimbili, big male, and we've seen him grab a warthog from underground, actually pull it out. So I might go have a look at him now. Okay, so now we start looking very, very carefully. Now there's lots of great spots to hide little cubs here, in amongst the Phoenix reclinata, the wild date palms. So it says this tree here. So it's likely to be this thicket over here. You can see there's lots of little gullies, which would be ideal to pop a little lion cub in if you're a mom. Now we're trying to look for one that's got a bit of wear on it, moving in and out, because she will do that quite often. So I'm pretty sure this is the spot, somewhere around these two trees. I think that looks to be the spot there. Well, Craig, we're going to look in the base of that green bush there. I think that's where they'll be, hidden in there somewhere. Now, often in these cases, it's quite difficult to spot them when Mom's not here, because they'll be keeping dead still and sleeping, waiting for Mom to come back, especially if they are under 4 weeks old. But it is very exciting to have new cubs with the Salt Lake Pride. We're going to have to come down here a bit more often and come check up on them. I'm pretty certain this is the spot. It looks to be the spot. There's lots of good areas for the cubs to hide. And the ground's a bit hard, so I'm trying to see if there's any lion tracks here, but I can't see any at the moment. There's water, there's shade. It's a good spot for Mom to lie, and that's why I think it's here, because I can see some grass that's been flattened. I think that's probably where she feeds them. Okay, I'm going to try one last spot to see if we can have a look in there. We've tried from the other bank to no avail. I'm pretty sure this is the spot where the little monsters are. It's a good spot, and quite difficult for us to even get in and around it, which means it'll be difficult for quite a lot of things. And a lot of animals don't like doing things difficultly. See, I think they're just in there. I don't think we're going to be able to see them unless Mom's here, unfortunately, but I'm trying to just see in there somewhere. Let's have a look deeper into the bush, and I don't see any movement. But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time here regardless if Mom's not here, so I'm going to leave it. I'm definitely going to be coming back this week to check in on the Salt Lake Pride and hopefully get our first view of those little cubs. It is a truly beautiful area down here near the border. I'm pretty sure that's the spot. Sorry, Faith, you broke up there. Can you go again? Well, it seems like Jamie's having an elephant day. She's been with one of the biggest. Now she's with a little one.
One little male that has got a very, very long way to go before it reaches the size and impressive age of the elephant that we were with earlier. Hey, you sweet little thing. This is too gorgeous. I'm sorry, Faith, you broke up there. What did you say? Sure, if you want to. They are moving away from us, but I'll try and keep up with it. Oh, look at this little trunk. They're irresistible, aren't they? There was the complete magic of that gentleman elephant from earlier. And now there's this utterly gorgeous little creature wandering along. It must be so exhausting with those little legs having to keep up with Mum. Mum's just striding along. There is something behind them. It's a group of banded mongoose. Hey, I thought I saw that movement earlier. It'd be an interesting example to see if the elephants chased them, to try and talk a little bit about elephants being afraid of mice and where that whole story came from. But in this case, the elephants did not even think of responding. They're probably really thirsty, you know. In fact, I think that's exactly where they're going. I think that they're going back to where I came from, to the water, which could be really lovely, especially because that poor little one is going to have to bend down so far to be able to drink from that lugger. They're getting that water walk about them. Let's go around. They're gonna go have a drink. Nation. She's enormous. Oh, I do apologize. Apparently there was a little bit of a dip in terms of our signal, which obviously would have interfered with your picture and your sound. We do apologize for that. It's just one of those things that does happen every now and again. As you know, we've been battling off gremlins at the moment quite fiercely in the Mara. I'm hoping, so far, touch wood, it seems to be relatively under control this afternoon. Mary, that baby Ellie is probably somewhere in the region of around about 6 months or so. It's at the point where now it's going to start eating solid food. It's got a good grasp of at least its coordination of its legs, less so its trunk, but all baby Ellies have to start somewhere. So I would guess it's somewhere around the region of 6 months or so, as a broad guess. Maybe a couple of weeks younger, maybe a couple of weeks older, but around that region. This can't be the best drinking spot for them. I wonder if they've got somewhere else in mind. They probably know this area really, really well. Yes, essentially that is correct. So within animals that have a strict breeding season, the females come into estrus and are only capable of falling pregnant at that time of year. The males are capable of reproducing throughout the year, but what you will find, like for example with something like an impala, not here, well, let me explain that in a sec, not so much here, but definitely in South Africa. So while they are more than capable of mating throughout the year, they get certain advantages during the breeding season when their testosterone levels grow up. There we go. So their testosterone levels shoot up through the roof and they get certain physiological changes that assist them when it comes to mating. So their sperm production increases, they get slightly sort of a thickening around the neck, they are much more aggressive, and just before the build-up to that breeding season, they are in peak physical condition. And testosterone helps a little bit. So, while it is certainly the case that male animals can breed, even in those with strict breeding season, could breed all year round, there are certain advantages that nature gifts them or for some of them, during the breeding season. The reason I said that it doesn't really apply to impala here is because there is no real strict breeding season for impala in this area. One of the reasons why the males are so large. Look at you, little thing. I am. I'm just going to keep walking, but I absolutely am. Whenever you're ready, guys, we're going to be joined by audiences. Well, it just allows us simply a slightly wider reach. Hello and welcome to a truly gorgeous sight with one of the cutest baby animals in the world. Certainly there are lots of very, very cute baby animals, and it's difficult to say any baby animal is not cute, but baby African elephants are definitely right up there with the cutest. And this tiny little one stretching out its legs, it's a young male, as it attempts to follow mom towards water. Now, just a quick introduction as to where we are and what it is we're doing. My name is Jamie. This afternoon, Archie is on camera with me, and we are live from the Masai Mara in Kenya. So what that means is, because it's live, you can send through your questions in the comments section below. It's just an opportunity for us to share a really very sweet sighting. Hold on a sec. Let's catch up with it. I think they will let us get quite a bit closer so we can show you just how adorable this little male is. For some reason it reminds me of a Great Dane puppy at the moment. It's the long legs, I think. The long legs working frantically to keep up with mum. There we go. Now you can see as we're driving along, they're not in any way bothered by our presence. They're not stressed out at all. They're very, very used to safari vehicles, and as a result it gives us this opportunity to view them in peace and in terms of watching their natural behavior. Now what you'll notice with baby elephants in particular is, while they walk like this, the lack of control that they have over their trunks. Now it takes them a good few years to properly master the use of what is essentially a very, very complex thing. Now, that trunk can bend almost in any direction. It can stretch forward and contract backwards, almost like an accordion. And it is capable of picking up something as small as a matchstick off the ground. So it is a very sensitive tool at the elephant's disposal. Now you'll see mum as she's walking. She's constantly twisting the tip of her trunk, whereas the little one, it just flops everywhere. Valerie, you say adorable baby Ellie. He is, isn't he? He really truly is. Making their way towards water. Now what you'll often see, now it's very, very hot here. It's the late afternoon. The heat's been building all day. And there is water just up ahead in the direction that these elephants are walking in. And I suspect that's where they're going. But what you'll see if they are feeling really thirsty, is they might even get what we term a water walk, which is basically sheer excitement. And they start to, it's like a horse that's seen the stable, or smelt the stable. They suddenly increase their speed. Oh, mum stopped for a particularly tasty patch of grass. You can see little antelope in the background every now and again. Those are Thompson's gazelle. And there's little one, following along behind. Elephants are naturally very intelligent creatures, which means that the little ones are often particularly inquisitive. They want to know everything about their world. There's so much exploring and learning to be done, and that is all done within its first few months of life. All that tactile exploration. There we go. You can see another older female has moved in, helping to, well, just really to keep the front female company. Catherine, you say the poor little legs have to keep up. I know, I was actually just thinking about that. Mum's striding forward, her massive legs taking steps that are easily 2 meters, or strides that are 2 meters long, and the poor little one has to work furiously to keep up. Must be exhausting. Of course, like all youngsters, a little elephant like this needs far more sleep than an adult does, and what you'll find is that during the day, as they move along like this, the little ones will stop, go to sleep, and the entire herd stops around them. So they will form a protective circle and let them sleep in the shade. We just wanted to share this really little special moment in time with you, since nothing is more gorgeous than a baby elephant. Now, as our elephants make their way towards water, let's just stay with them for a little bit longer. I want to see how this baby's going to drink when the walls of this particular crossing are so steep. Mom knows the answer to that. Mom knows of a good spot. She's gone right down. She's actually disappeared. Of course she does. I didn't for 1 second think that she was going to make her little one try and lean down over the steep wall. But she knew exactly what to do. That's why they were aiming for here. Okay, just give me a brief moment so that we can get to a point where we can see them without disturbing them. They've gone right down into this massive dip. Here we go. See how clever Mum is? She's taken baby down an embankment where it can stand, doesn't run the risk of falling down, and it's a place, an oasis, where they can drink and feed on the reeds that are around it. The little baby, the tiny baby, is hidden at the moment. She's hidden behind the mum. I don't want to move again, because otherwise what I'll end up doing is I'll be putting myself between them and the rest of the herd, and that's not something that anybody wants to do. Elephants, their herd bonds are very, very strong, and you can actually upset their day considerably. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to enjoy this little scene for a little moment longer, and then it's time for us to say goodbye to those of you who have joined us for this action broadcast. Thank you for so much for sharing this little snippet in time, live from the Masai Mara in Kenya, with one of the most spectacular animals on this entire planet. From myself and Archie and the entire herd of elephants, thank you, and if anything presents itself as an opportunity to share it with you, we'll be back with you once again. Okay, so for those of you who might have been a little bit confused by that, obviously, as I said, we are occasionally joined on a wider platform. Hello, girl. It's so steep here. They've gone right down into this drainage dip. I want to try and see if we can see the little one, but I don't think that we can. Stunning, stunning scene. Isn't that extraordinary? Okay, remember how I mentioned at the start of the drive that we would be joined this afternoon by a crew in South Africa? So I would very much like to send you across to my friends there so that they can show you some of the magic that South Africa has to offer.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the afternoon game drive here in the Kruger National Park. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and on the camera we've got Fergus. It's a lovely 24 degrees centigrade, around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's a lovely tranquil afternoon. Nice start to the afternoon. We've just stopped here next to Vuyatela Dam. There's quite a few male Inyala. They've all been walking around slowly. Clouds building once more. Battle mode. Okie dokie, folks. So did you see that with that Nyala going into full battle mode there? I just wanted it to be quiet, just to have a look at him. He was raising his hair on his back, that lovely pilo erection with the white hair right along the ridge. That's what they would do towards each other. I think the one just a little bit on his right is starting to show a little bit of interest in having a little bit of a showdown. And then they start to walk in parallel, slowly as, and starting to, there we go. The battle has begun. They've both put some mud on their horns. The swords have been drawn. The battle lines have been set. And the Nyala are fighting it out. Henry, comment from Henry saying that Nyala looks like it's meditating. Well, it definitely does. It's almost like a form of yoga, if you have to ask me. But that is their utmost full-on battle dress as they move in slow motion like that. That is the way that they are trying to establish dominance between each other. And these males all seem to be going through the motions of establishing who's in charge. Now, it's quite fascinating to watch as they go in slow motion, and the one to move off first would be the loser. Now, question from Proud Cat Mama, how long are their horns? We're looking at about 6 to 10 inches. So these bigger bulls, as they get older like this and they start to get the white tips on the end, we're looking at about 10-12 inches. It's not massive in terms of antelope. Their horns aren't huge, but for Nyala these are reasonably sized or almost fully grown. As they start to get to the ultimate length for Nyala, they start to get the little white or ivory tips, as we call it. A little bit further off to the right, those wildebeest are starting to move through, and a couple of them even starting to roll in the mud. A lovely scene here down by Vuyatela Dam. And there a little bit of marking as well as the rest of them shift through. There's a couple of red-billed oxpeckers catching a ride and probably just trying to pick off a couple of parasites. Question from Mia, would the Nyala feel intimidated by the wildebeest? I wouldn't say they are intimidated at all. It's almost comforting for them to have more eyes and ears around. So this is a bit of an aggregation, as we would call it, a bit of a mixture of different species around a waterhole, and they like to have more of the same because they're all trying to evade the predators. So you've got more eyes and ears and less chance of being eaten. As those Nyala still putting up the hair on their backs, still showing off towards each other. They're not showing off towards the wildebeest. That is a definite dominance display between the males. Very slow yoga-like movements. Fascinating. There's a couple of Egyptian geese just off to the right. It's most likely a monogamous pair, also grazing as they go along. They're also starting to nest at the moment and starting to chase each other around. There's probably a male and female. Question from Paula, does it hurt when they bake their horns, when they rake their horns? I think I've heard when they're putting that mud on their horns and they're pushing it in the ground, no, it definitely doesn't hurt them. I would liken it to sort of rubbing a calloused foot on the ground or in the sand. It's almost quite nice. It's quite comforting. It's not a bad feeling at all. And I remember that those horns are keratin based, very much like your hair or your nails. So it's a very similar sort of texture and feeling that the animals will have with that as well. You can cut your nails off and it doesn't hurt you, yet they can break pieces of their horns off and they can rub it through the ground, they can bash it against trees, they can bash it against each other, and it's probably a little bit like ladies if they had to grow their nails very long and if they had to have sword fights with long nails, if you could liken it to humans, something like that. So as they continue to graze through, it's lovely, those feet of the nyala almost looking like they got socks on, and it's almost the only part of the male in nyala that sort of stays the same from when they're babies or young, because the males when they're young they look identical to the females and only the legs remain that fawny colors. Okay folks, as we continue here watching this very calming scene with the wildebeest and the nyala, let's go over to James and see what he is up to.
Good afternoon, one and all, watching this very live broadcast of a safari out of the Sabi hunt in South Africa, and of course the Masai Mara in Kenya. My name is James Hendry, and on camera today is Viam Doran Barak. That is his rather large thumb. As I have said to you, he is only about 5 feet 3 inches tall, but his thumb is that of a very much larger human being. It is wonderful to have you with us. Please keep talking to us using the hashtag Safari Live. Otherwise, you can use, of course, the chat on the YouTube chat stream thing. Okay, there's the housekeeping done. My plan for this afternoon was to try and find the Nkuhuma Pride, who we were following this morning with Herbert Koza, excellent tracker that he is, and we did pick the tracks up again. They've crossed over here. I'm pretty sure they've crossed into the next door reserve, either Simbambalai or Arathusa. We'll go around and have a look-see, but I think we were about an hour behind them this morning. They were on top of all the vehicle tracks, but they were certainly well in front of us by the time the drive ended at 8 o'clock. So I think probably they are somewhere in Simbambili or Arathusa. We'll go and confirm that, and then we'll see what else we can see. Unless, of course, anyone would like to suggest some better plan for the afternoon, and I'm all ears if you are. Here we go. Are you ready, Vim? Good. Here we are. We will of course be joined by some children at 5:45 Central African time. Now Leia, is it Leia as in princess? Don't know. Okay, Leia, you had a... Oh, it is, as in Princess Leia. Well, funny that, we were just talking about Star Wars. Princess Leia, you're wondering about whether or not it's easier to track leopards or lions. Well, lions, by virtue of the fact that they are larger, makes them easier because they make a heavier mark, of course, in the soil wherever they walk. The second reason they're easier to track is that they're normally not alone, which means that you've got sort of more than one chance, if you like. If you see a leopard walking and you're trying to track a leopard, you've only got one chance to see where it puts its foot. But if you're tracking a pride of lions, and I think we were tracking a lioness, 2 cubs and a male this morning. It was just the lioness and the 2 cubs, so I don't know where the male went. But it's much easier than tracking a single leopardess, for example. And of course the cats are more difficult to track than, say, elephants or rhino or buffalo, because they are that much lighter and that much softer walking than those other animals. Alright, now I believe that Ralphie has got himself probably fishing. Let's go and find out if it is a more successful fisherman than I.
Yes, folks, I do believe I am a more successful fisherman than James. I don't even think James fishes at all. But here is somebody who doesn't fish particularly well either. And it's the woodland kingfisher. Now, we know it's the woodland kingfisher because of that black underneath on the bill and the red on top. And he was calling a minute ago as well, which is the dead giveaway. See how he's bobbing his head a little bit? Now remember, birds will be judging distance by the way that they triangulate, by moving the head from side to side and up and down, and that's how they measure their distance. Now excuse me, a little bit earlier I did forget that it would be great if you join us on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter and on the YouTube live chat. Please send through your questions and your comments. I know you have been doing so, but I did omit to mention that you can. But for all those new viewers out there, this is a lovely little sight watching this woodland kingfisher. He's been bombing it down to the pan. Paula commenting that she loves the blue on this woodland kingfisher, before I get in trouble with James. It's a woodland kingfisher. It's a lovely turquoise blue, and it's a lot to do with the refraction of light. As with the, look at that, he's not fishing, he's just going down for a splash in the water. So, and he's surprised that heron. I think that heron now thinks that there's a fish that has just jumped there, and now he's moving over thinking that a fish had moved. Ladybird question coming through. Is his wings green or blue? Well, I think it's a bit of a turquoise color, but now that is all down to the viewer, because this is actually a refraction of the light, so it's a little bit of an illusion. We actually think that that color is like that. We are receiving the light and interpreting it as that color, but that is quite interesting with a lot of birds, that the color is actually not as such. It's just the refraction of light which causes us to believe the color as so. But a very interesting question there, Ladybird. What do you think? For me, I think it's a turquoise, so maybe a bit of a mixture between blue and green. And there's a little bit of a pair. And they are migratory birds, so we don't get them in winter. They have come down from the Central African areas. These birds follow the summer. Nancy asking the question, do kingfishers mate for life? I do believe that they are seasonally monogamous, and if they had to lose a partner, I know that they would take on another one, but I'm not 100% sure if it is seasonally monogamous or if they do continue that. Now, if anybody can let me know if I am incorrect, I stand corrected, but I do believe that they are seasonally monogamous. So they would move together for the season, not changing partners within that season, but they might change partners through different seasons. Now there, I think the one just caught an insect. Woodland, I keep getting it wrong. Woodland kingfishers are insectivorous. They are not piscivores, as your pied kingfisher or giant kingfisher would be. They move more so through vegetated areas and not necessarily next to water holes like the pied kingfisher and the giant. As well as the little malachite, also piscivore, the pygmy kingfisher, the woodland kingfisher, both being insectivorous. Sancroft, how long does a kingfisher live? Question there. I would imagine it's probably at a maximum of about 5 or 6 years, but I don't have an exact amount of time that a bird of this little size, and in more so the woodland kingfisher, how long exactly would they live? I would imagine around 5 or 6 years, 5 or 6 seasons. That is my guess, but that's a very good question. Right, now off they go, and I think that is a good indication for us to move off too. We've sat here nicely next to this little water hole. Right, Judy, lovely comment coming through from you. Thank you. Yes, you're not a blue fan, but that is a fantastic, beautiful blue color on the woodland kingfisher. I'm going to continue up along the road. Let's see what else we can find. We've had a lovely start to the afternoon drive. That was fantastic, but let's move along. I know this morning that Noel did pick up on one of the leopards, and it had been moving around this area, so we might be lucky that we pick up on that particular animal. Otherwise, it is still early in the drive. It is still quite warm, around 24, 25 degrees, 75, 76 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's still quite warm for the predators, but they have been moving around. They're starting to move around after the rain, marking their territories after they've been washed away. So we might get lucky and we get some more of the predators on the prowl. But we'll still stop and have a look at everything in between. Okay, as I continue driving along the road in search of our elusive cats, let's go across to Jamie, who is also driving, looking for similar things.
I am. I'm looking for many a similar thing. What I have found is not something that you will see in Djuma, though. Of course, we always stop for Tommies, but we hardly ever stop and actually look at the Grant's gazelle. The Grant's gazelle is as Liam called it, the white impala, which of course, they're about the size of an impala. So I can completely see where he was coming from there. Liam, of course, was also the one who came up with the Coke's hartebeest being Topi that forgot to put their pants on. So he does have a very descriptive way of summing up the situation where antelope are concerned. So a Grant's gazelle, this is a large male, and not so long ago I actually saw, I can't remember if it was today or yesterday or when it was, there's a really nice large herd of them right next to a herd of impala. Oh, speaking of which, I'll tell you about the impala in a moment, but look how many flies this poor antelope is covered in. Goodness gracious. I mean, I know they're bad today. There are lots and lots of flies after all of the rain, and we've had two dry days. And as a result, the flies have just multiplied. You can see they're irritating him. Shame, boy. Yes, run. Run. He's doing what we do when they find their ways into the vehicle and they stay in our slipstream. Catherine, are you talking about in general, or are you talking about within the Masai Mara? Now, you wanted to know how many antelope there are. Within the Mara, we can do a quick count if you want. Within the world, there are, if I remember correctly, how many antelope were there? I remember reading it. 70 or so odd species. Just trying to remember. I've got the page of the book swimming in front of me. $75? No, I can't remember off the top of my head. I know it. But for some reason today my brain is absolute mush. I did get up half past 4 to get the car ready. I couldn't hear you there, Faith. Sorry. Faith's been Googling frantically for me in order to confirm the exact number of species. 91 species of African antelope. Oh, most of which are native to Africa. Okay. I think it's 75 or around 74, 75 in Africa. So within the Mara, we've got the Grant's gazelle, we've got the Tommy gazelle, we've got the impala, the eland, the dake species, the oribi, the two different reedbuck, steenbok, Okay, it's 72 in Africa. Alright. Okay, 72 in Africa. So I was not far off. 72 species of antelope within Africa, and 91 in the entire world. So the vast majority of them are within or on the African continent. Now I've lost count. I was doing a species count. Wildebeest, waterbuck, topi, Coke's hartebeest. I can't count today. I can barely count over 10 without using my fingers at the moment. Lots. There are a fair amount of antelope out here. I've named most of them. Megan, no, impala are not closely related to deer at all. They are essentially the ecological equivalent. The big difference, the really big difference between antelope and deer is the horn structure. So antelope have horns, deer have antlers, and they are made of entirely different materials. So an antelope's horns are solid bone covered by a keratin sheath. And they don't shed. They never ever shed. Antlers, as far as I know, are also true bone in a few species, covered with velvet, but they do shed. So those are the big differences, but essentially they are the ecological equivalent. They fulfill a very similar niche. They're ruminants, they are an important prey species for a large number of different predators, and impala in particular are very successful. I was going to tell you about the impala researcher. Please do not take offense at the following comparison. But I have found in my life that often researchers tend to somehow end up resembling the animal that they are researching. Obviously, I'm not trying to be offensive in this. It's just one of those odd things that I've noticed. A lot of the time, there's a few similarities. Anyway, this poor guy was so badly stuck in the mud, and Archie and I had just stopped to eat. I think it was around about close to lunchtime. We hadn't eaten breakfast, so we stopped and we had a cup of tea, and Archie goes, "I can hear revving. I think that car's stuck." I was going, "I know. I just want to drink. I just want to finish my tea." But then, of course, I felt guilty because I've been in that position. Anyway, we went to go and rescue him. Turns out he's an impala researcher. I was going to ask him a little bit more about his research, but he seemed to be a little bit fraught from the experience of being stuck. Shame. He did. It was one of those really awkward situations where it was so clear that what looked like fairly solid road, or at least a drivable puddle, was in fact a massive mire. And it took us a good few goes before we got the poor guy out. Now, I am not going to gloat over that, because I know I have been in that position. I know I will be in that position again. But it was just interesting. He was driving around. He did mention that he's playing calls to the impala to see the responses. So it was interesting. I would have asked him further, but he seemed to be quite keen to evacuate the muddy area that we were in. But Pucker did well, considering. Big heavy Land Cruiser versus Pucker went quite successfully, I felt. Archie did a marvelous job of helping to direct and put rocks under his wheels. But I think I also might have given him a little bit of a fright, because I realized we were not getting out of there very easily, because I was slipping as well. So I just dropped the clutch and yanked him out. It was a little bit of a distressing shudder, but all seems to be well. I didn't really want to go and get stuck with him. I have never driven on this road before, and it's not going in the direction I wanted to. I wanted to go into the marsh. It hasn't worked out terribly well for me. Okay, Here's an interesting message I've just got from Faith. Apparently, James back on Djuma is once again demonstrating his climbing skills, apparently. Let's go and find out what he's up to this time.
Hello everybody, here we find ourselves on the search for animals, but I thought as we came past this position, which now has a new road going past it, I would show you what we mean when we say Gowrie's offline, or it's not working, or the tower's down. This is what we mean. This is one of the towers. This is the Gowrie repeater, and on it of course is a repeating station, so the signal comes from the camera out of the vehicle up to the top of this tower, and then it goes back to final control and to you. All of that happens at the speed of light and set up very quickly. The other reason for being up here of course is to try and search for something of biological worth to this drive, and I can see nothing. It is spectacularly beautiful up here though, I will tell you. I can see the Drakensberg off to the west. I can see the line of granitic outcrops on which Ulusaba sits all the way down towards the foothills of the Drakensberg. I can see most of the way to White River over there, and there's just a lovely arrangement of sort of soft low-hanging clouds, gorgeously blue sky, wonderfully verdant early summer vegetation. It is a sight to fill the heart with joy. The sight looking downwards, however, is one that is not so joyful. Now, if there are any questions you have about the technical aspects of what I'm doing, you're welcome to send them through as I climb down. And then we are going to go down the new road, known as Mendoza Road for some reason, and we will then find ourselves, hopefully, with some evidence of Shadow and her cub, whose name is not Barbara. There we go. Wiem, I've almost made it to the bottom. Thank you so much. So that's the plan. 1 second. Can you see here, Wiem? You see here? Yeah, you can. This is the nest, and it's new. Although I don't think it's occupied. Pretty sure it isn't. Of the red-headed weaver. And I know it's new because this tower is new. And if you're ever trying to identify which weaver bird nest you're looking at, this is an easy one because it's the most untidy one. And what's so clever about it, of course, is that the entrance is under here, which makes it extremely difficult for any predators to get into it. So that is the red-headed weaver. Wonderful details. There. Look. Just follow the line of the cable. You got him. Obviously isn't that beautiful? Obviously it's rejected by the female, and so now the male with his beautiful bright red head is having to make another one. And it's funny, they tend to prefer these sort of man-made lines, unfettered by branches and that sort of thing. They prefer those compared with any of the other weavers. That is wonderful. Anyway, this is the Gowrie repeater, and I hope you've enjoyed your little tour thereof. Right.